Cool. Alrighty, well, welcome back to another episode of Combos with KEEGS. I'm here with Audrey Kacel, a tattoo artist out of Holland, Michigan, correct?
Yep.
And how far away is Holland from like is that a major city, I guess?
The closest like city is Grand Rapids, and that's like half hour away. And then Detroit's
Gotcha.
like 2.5 hours. We're like
I
the
see.
opposite side of Michigan from Detroit.
I see. That's
Yeah.
funny because the Buffalo Bills actually had to go play in Detroit because we got so much
Yeah.
snow.
Oh, I heard about
It
that.
was
Yeah.
we got like 77 where the stadium is. It's in Orchard Park, which is like a suburb of Buffalo, and we got like 77 inches in 2 days.
That's
It
crazy.
was it was nuts. It was nuts. But I appreciate you coming on the podcast and doing this collab with us. It means a lot. So let's get started with the first question. How did you get into the tattoo world?
It was kind of an accident. I've done art my whole life. And I went to art school because like my parents were pretty strict about like all their kids going to college. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to do art. So I did all 4 years of college, graduated, was working at a nonprofit, and ended up kind of sucking. Was not at all what I expected, and I'm like, well, damn, like, what am I gonna do with my life? Like, everything's been kind of like leading up to this. I don't know what to do. One of my friends is like, you'd be a good tattoo artist. I'm like, I don't know where on earth to like even start with that. Um, and so she's like, "Oh, like my buddy, her dad like owned a studio in Holland. You should check it out." And so I walked in there with a portfolio, kind of like sneakily slid it to him, like, "Hey, you want to check this out?" And he's like, "Yeah, you can like hang out here." There was already like somebody else there, but they ended up quitting like pretty shortly after I arrived, and I kind of just fell into it, and I've loved it, and it's been going pretty good, so can't complain.
Right on. How long
Yeah.
how long have you been doing it for? Has it been like or I should say
I've
when did you sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, I was gonna say I've been doing it a little over 3 years now.
Gotcha. Dang. So still pretty fresh into it.
Yeah, yeah.
Did you do like how long was the apprenticeship total?
So I was like a little more unique of a situation because I'd already gone through art school. And I feel like a lot of
Oh,
apprenticeship
okay.
is normally like teaching you how to like put together compositions and all that kind of stuff. So my apprenticeship, I believe, lasted like 4 months total, but I feel like it's normally like a year
Dang.
plus. So I picked it up pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Dang. Do you think like the background in having that art degree it made the transition to like being a tattoo artist easier?
Yeah, in a way it did. Yeah, yes, but also it like made it was kind of strange because like when you have an art degree, it's like it's kind of like prepping you to go into like the contemporary art world, which is like a more like I don't know, like polished kind of put together kind of place, and then you go into a shop where like none of the guys ever went to art school and they're just like, yeah, I just tattoo, and I'm like, they always call me college kid, so so like it prepared me in my art, yes, but like I had to kind of learn the whole like tattoo jargon and like shop etiquette and all that too. I didn't know any of that.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, the building I'm in used to be a gallery, and like you said, it was more like a polished, put together vibe, and not
Yeah.
so much like my vibe. And now that I have my tattoo
No.
artist in the studio in front of me, it was just a complete 180
Oh yeah.
from once we got into the building. And yeah, I think it's definitely an interesting conversation because I guess we can get into it a little bit. Do you think the like from your experience being in the like polished art world in college, was it very more about relationships and less about art, or was it more about art, if that makes sense?
Kind of both. But it was like more about like art and what it meant in conjunction to contemporary art. It wasn't just like art for being art. It was like, what does it mean all the time? And I'm like, what does it always need to have a meaning? Um, and that kind of annoys
Yeah,
me about
yeah.
people with tattoos too. They're like, but what does it mean? I'm like, it's just dumb. Like, I like it. Like, can't art just be for the enjoyment of people to see, you know? Um, But it's kind
Yeah.
of funny because I live in the same town I went to college to, so occasionally I'll like run into old professors and stuff. And I've had some conversations with them, and seeing the perceptions change about like the tattoo world has been cool. I have one professor in particular who was like like super hard ass, made many students cry in the studio. Um, but she was like, she was hardcore. But like, she was
Dang.
emailing me about tattooing and like, she had other students interested in it too. And it was cool that she's like, talking to them about that as like an avenue for art.
Dang. That is crazy. Was
Yeah.
like I can't even imagine that. What do they, what are they hard on you about, you know?
Just,
Like you
oh
just fuck up a
gosh.
painting or something?
Yeah, well, it's kind of funny because like being on the other end of it now, like she was super hard on me, but I could see that's because she like could tell I had potential. But like also, it's like when you're
Yeah, yeah.
like 18 to 22 years old in that like pressure pot of college, you're like, I don't need to be yelled at right now. It's like 2 a.m. and I'm trying to finish this midterm, like lay off. But it like
Yeah.
prepared me for the pressure of
Gotcha.
tattooing in a weird way. Because like some artists get really frazzled when people want like last minute changes and stuff, but I'm like so used to people just being like, yeah, start over, um, do it again that it like doesn't really bother me that much. So,
Hmm. What are like some typical kind of changes that wouldn't necessarily get you flustered, but it's kind of like almost an annoyance in the way that it's not like the client's fault, but it's more their ignorance to the process of getting a tattoo.
yeah, I'd say the most frequent thing that people want changed is like, um, or they'll like be like, oh, they'll send you a reference image and like you'll be like, oh, but I'm doing it my own way. But in their head, they're like, I want it just like this Pinterest thing I saw. But I'm like, well, trying to explain to people that like you can't directly steal other people's stuff's pretty difficult sometimes because like what's on me? Why does it matter? And it's like
Hmm.
you have this responsibility. I feel as an artist to like do your own work and not take it from other people. Um, but there are like tattooers who will do that, so it's hard to get clientele to understand that that's not cool. Um,
Yeah,
yeah.
I totally agree. I, I was talking to my artist recently about this. I think that a lot of tattoo artists are starting to like regain the power that I think they should have always had. Um, but in a way that like they don't, with platforms like Instagram and having conversations like these and kind of showing your personality outside of tattoos, it creates for a higher demand. So now
Mm-hmm.
you see a lot of artists, and like all the conversations I've had with them, they can kind of pick and choose what they want to do now.
Yeah, for sure.
Especially like the last podcast I did with her name's Kate and she tattoos out of Chicago. Um, we were talking about how there's the platform of Instagram allows a small artist to kind of make a name for themselves without having to be in a shop, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Do you see that? Do you see Instagram or like any other platforms, or I guess any other ways to show your art, kind of pushing you more toward that? I guess what's the word, like recognizable to you, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, it's crazy because when I started, or it was funny, my boss sent me like a screenshot of my Instagram page like 2 years ago, and I had like 700 followers, and I'm at like 8,500. And like, it's just crazy over 2 years,
Yeah.
like how widespread it's gotten. Like, I've had people like fly from California and stuff, and like, that's crazy. Like, when I started, I'd never thought that would happen. Like, I've like, there was
Yeah.
a Michigan like newspaper who like interviewed me and stuff, and I'm like, what was happening? Like, I
Yeah.
am from like a small town in Michigan, and like people like there's this girl in like Holland, the Netherlands, who thought that I lived there, and she's like, "Oh, like when are you coming to like my city?" And I'm like, No, I'm in like Holland, Michigan, not Holland, the Netherlands." But it's like crazy that she even like found me.
That's
Like social media is insane in that way.
it
Um,
is.
yeah, it's it's caused some imposter syndrome big time because I'm just living my best life out here in Michigan, and people are like, "Oh, like I'll fly from California." I'm like, "No, don't do that."
Right. That's funny that you mentioned that because we talked about that on the last episode as well, the imposter syndrome. Because I'm starting to like, I deal with it too, in a different way. Because obviously I'm not a tattoo artist, so like I can't give that gift of art in that way as much as I would love to, because that's all I think about and talk about every day of my life. But it's weird. Like once you start reaping the benefits of your hard work, you're like, do I deserve this?
Yeah,
Um,
it's insane because like everybody around me
yeah,
is like, "Oh, you deserve it. Like you work so hard," but it almost feels like I didn't work hard enough because like it just like the algorithm like sweeps you up and takes you out, and it's like I feel like the guys who like were famous 10 years ago put the hard work in before social media, and it's like I guess it's a tool, like a really powerful tool, but it feels kind of like cheating in a way.
Mhm. It's yeah, it's strange, and I've kind of like forced myself to believe in it in a way that it's almost digital real estate. So if you don't start investing in it now, it's gonna just get harder and harder,
Oh yeah.
which sucks because you got to keep up with it. And I'm sure, like, do you feel that pressure of like trying to keep up with, um, posting your art
For
and
sure.
making sure you're promoting yourself?
Yeah, it's like I have a love-hate relationship with social media. I don't want to have to be on it all the time, but like if you're not on it all the time, then you're like gonna fall down in the algorithms and everything, and then people aren't gonna see you. And it's like I get most of my business, like I ask everybody I tattoo where they find me, and like 95% of them are like, "Oh, I found you on Instagram." And I'm like, "Well, so if you stop doing it, then you're like gonna not have all the people coming." So it's like you kind of need it, but you don't want it, and I don't know. I'm not huge into social media like in my personal life, so it kind of sucks that I have to do it for business life. But
Yeah,
it is what it is.
yeah. I think having that separation is huge, though. Just treating it like you said as just business. Just you're on it for one reason, and that's to promote your art and to get clients and stuff. And it definitely, if you, I've seen this with so many different artists. Like one day, they just blow up, and then that can change their life because now
Oh
their
yeah,
demand for tattoos is unbelievable. Like you could be booked out for 3 years if you really wanted to.
hmm
Um, I guess that kind of leads into my next question. Like, what is your booking process like? Like, how do you go about that?
yeah. So that's been its own mountain to like kind of figure out. Because obviously when I started, there wasn't like this much demand, so I kind of could just always leave my books open, like take proposals via email or like in person or whatever. But like the more as time has gone on, like that's just like not feasible to happen. So I've like been trying to figure out a way that works for me. And the best way I figured out is like Google Forms, just like opening it when my books are open, having everybody like fill out every field. So like all my questions are answered. Because when people would send like emails in, they'd like leave fields blank, then I'd have to email them back, and then like by the time they responded, like there was no more room, and people would get frustrated. I'd get frustrated. Um, so it's like it seems really impersonal, but that's just the way that works the best. And people get frustrated because they're like, "Oh, your books are never open." I'm like, "Well, I don't know what to do about that. Like, I'm sorry." Um, but you have to like draw the line
Yeah.
somewhere. Because like I used to just be on my phone answering emails all the time, and my husband's like, "You can't do that. Like, are you at work? Like, get off your phone. Like, stop answering work emails." But when you're self-employed, it's really hard to draw the line between like what's work time and what's personal time because it feels like it never really ends. Um, so drawing those lines has been
Yeah.
super important for me to feel like I'm not going crazy all the time.
Yeah, I totally feel that. I totally feel that. It's definitely that's like the biggest struggle I have is separating uh work from time away from it, because
Mhm.
majority of my I would say 99% of the work I have to do is on my phone, answering emails, taking phone calls,
Hmm.
texts, and trying to like get everything in line. Um, and unfortunately, I've kind of surrendered to that for the time being just because I have to. But it's definitely not a way to live for 30
Oh,
years,
for
you know?
sure. No.
It's yeah, it's not fun. And I can only imagine, especially being a tattoo artist, like what you guys go through as far as those angry clients who are trying to get in the books and they're like they never
Yeah.
get the attention that they are seeking. It frustrates me watching this happen, like because I'm day to day with my artist because I film for her and everything, and she tells
Hmm.
me all this stuff that these clients say when she opens her books, and I'm like, I don't know if I would have the patience with some people. I think I would just block them
It's
and then
wild.
never hear from them again.
Or the amount of people who are
It's
like,
crazy.
"Oh, I don't like the hours you work. Can you come in on like a Saturday when I'm off?" I'm like, if I came
Yeah,
into like the hardware store when you were off, you wouldn't come in for me. Like, why would I come on my day off to tattoo you? It's like a business, like anything else.
right.
There's business hours.
Yeah,
It's
of
ridiculous.
course. Um, do you think that with your demand growing and growing, I mean, it's only going to grow more.
Hmm.
Um, where I this is a conversation I'm really interested in. Like, where does the kind of line stop when you raise your prices, right? And the demand's still there. Like, and I like I said, I tell my artists this all the time. Like, if you just raise your prices, the people that really, really want to get tattoos from you will get them, and everyone
Yeah.
else will wean off. And they might complain like, "Oh, the prices are too high," blah 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 blah. And then you can just say like, "Well, 300 other people disagree with you." So, you know,
I think that's where
where
like
do you
the
think that
imposter
like
syndrome
that
kind of
balance
like,
comes?
yeah, I don't know. It's like I've talked to like my friends and like other tattooers about this too, and I think that's where the imposter syndrome kind of comes in. It's like I know I could be charging more, but I feel like it's like I don't know. It's like I know I haven't been doing this super long, and it's like I feel bad about charging a lot. Like I feel like I'm charging what I worth for the most part, but I know I could get more. But it's like I don't know when that like line falls between like being fair for what you're worth and like just being greedy. Um, and I don't want to like. There's
Yeah,
definitely some artists who I love their work, but will never get tattooed by because I just feel like it's just super like outside what is standard in the industry, and like good for them that people are paying that. But I'm like also, I feel like tattoos should be accessible for everybody. That's what like I hated about the contemporary art world is it's like super elitist. Like nobody can afford to buy these paintings, and it's
mm-hmm.
like sure I think tattoos have value, but I feel like they should be more accessible for like everybody who wants to get them. I don't want it to turn into kind of like a fine art market where nobody can afford them but the 1%.
That's a good point. I never thought about it like that, but that's a really good point. Um, Dang, that kind of shifts my whole view on it. Because it's tough navigating those waters. Because I think like tattoos are should be more expensive in ways because it is on you forever, and you're not. The conversation I personally think is shifting more toward like you're going to get a tattoo for the artist, not necessarily for the art. Like when
Mm-hmm.
I see an artist like yourself that I like, or someone in California or Florida, if I want to get a piece from them, it's not necessarily about the piece that I want. It's more that like I want to collect art from that
Mm-hmm.
artist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and that's how I feel about it
Um,
too. But I feel like the average like person doesn't think that way. Like I'm, yeah, I think of
mm,
myself as a collector, but some people just, want a tattoo done by you because they like your style. But they also want the tattoo. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Because I like run into people in my
it's
day
a
to day
hard
lives like
conversation.
everywhere in my life. Like I boulder and like climb, so I feel like I've worked my way through the climbing gym, like tattooing people. but it's like I don't want to be like unaccessible to them because like they're my acquaintances. But like I don't know. It's like there's a difference between like wanting to tattoo your peers and then like wanting to tattoo people who can like afford to pay what you want. I feel like I value this
Yeah.
job for the relationships I make rather than like the money. I mean, the money's nice, but I also like
Yeah.
enjoy like meeting people and talking about them, and I want to attract the kind of people who are like me and not so much um I don't know, like super rich, wealthy people who think they can get whatever they want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree. And I mean, I would I would generalize and say a majority of like the super rich, wealthy people probably are under the impression that tattoos are for criminals because they're just assholes. But
Mhm.
yeah, I don't know. A big part of the company is I'm just curious about that process because especially with women, and this is another thing that we could get into. Women in the tattoo industry are killing it, like
Mhm.
absolutely taking over from what I've seen. And I would
For sure.
like all I do every day is look for artists and you know look at tattoos and see what's happening around the country and around the world. And yeah, women in the tattoo industry are taking off. Do you notice that as well? And like, what do you think that could be attributed to?
Oh, for sure. Like when I walked into H Town when I started 3 years ago, they were all dudes like 35 and over. I was the first woman to ever work there. They were like kind of hesitant to give me a choice, like a chance in a way, because they're like, "Oh, is this like white girl gonna make it here?" Um, and I think they realized very quickly that I could just reach a different demographic of people who like I don't were maybe afraid to go to a tattoo shop or like super intimidated by it. I know when I started getting tattooed, I was really intimidated by like, you know, the big bearded tattoo man. Being 18 years old, like
Yeah,
where am I? And
yeah,
so I think part of the reason I started getting super popular is because I was the only woman tattoo artist at my shop and really the only one in Holland. So I kind of like cornered the market for a bit. And now my shop has like three full-time women artists. The new apprentice is a girl. Um, so only in that 3 years, like we've gone from like me being the only one to like us being the majority, which is super cool. And I have a lot of like younger, like women artists reaching out to me, like trying to figure out how to like join the industry and realizing it's not as intimidating as it seems. I mean, putting yourself out there is always going to be intimidating, but it's definitely, I
hmm
think, changing in the way it's done. Apprenticeships are changing kind of too. Like, it's not as like people aren't hazing each other as much anymore, and it's like not as much about the bullshit and more about the art, and which I think it always should have been that way. Um, but I think
Oh
with all
yeah.
these women artists coming up who are caring and like actually care what you think, um, all the douchebag guys who've been ruling the industry kind of realize, oh, I have to be nice to people or I'm not going to get customers anymore. Um,
Yeah.
I think that's has a lot to do with it. Because I've had a lot of clients being like, yeah, there's these artists who I really liked, but they kind of like were dismissive of my ideas or like didn't think it was cool, didn't listen to me. And it doesn't hurt to listen to people. Like even if I don't think it's cool, like I'll listen to them still. Because I think that's like a decent
Mm.
act of human decency that should happen regardless. Um, I don't know. When people's egos get in the way, I feel like that's an issue.
100%, 100%. And that, I mean, through these collaborations that I'm doing with Lonely Cowboy, like I think it's the first, I want to say it's the first seven or so, because I have them booked out for a while now, but I believe the first seven are all women.
That's
And
cool.
from what I've noticed, like reaching out to artists around the country is like I've I would say I probably reached out to 50% men, 50% women, and of the 50% of each, maybe 5% of the men answer back and 40% of the women answer back. And I think that just comes down to like, especially with the mental health conversation that I'm trying to bring up with tattoos, like women are just more they're willing to put themselves out there and talk about it, and they kind of don't want to do that. Um, but yeah, I guess leading into the mental health aspect of it, what do you believe that like a big part of getting tattoos or just the tattoo world kind of coincides with mental health, and most people don't even realize it?
Yeah, there's always that joke that tattoo artists are like underpaid therapists. And I think
Yeah,
that's actually
for
very much
sure.
true. People have definitely told me things that I should never know about them just meeting off the bat. Um, which is kind of interesting because originally when I was going to school, I was going for art therapy. So I always joke to my dad, I'm like, hey, look, I actually am doing art therapy kind of in a way, just like unofficially. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, like when I'm having a really shitty day, getting a tattoo just hits different. It's just like, I don't know, it
it
releases
does.
endorphins. It like, uh,
Yeah.
addictive for sure too. It's like people who don't have tattoos don't understand. I don't know. It's like a good vice in a way. It's like not hurting anybody.
Hmm.
I don't know. I was a big punk kid when I was younger, and just the whole like emo in my feels, getting tattoos was kind of cathartic. Um, and I feel like that's
Hmm.
different if you were an emo kid when you were younger versus just like wanting to get tattoos now. But um,
Yeah.
yeah, I definitely think tattoos can be super healing for people. Um, do a lot of memorial tattoos and stuff like that, and people just like get so emotional over them to have that like reminder. I think that's a super cool thing to do. Just like have the
Yeah,
permanence and reminder all the time.
for sure. Do you have any, or I should say, what is the longest piece that you have on yourself?
The longest time I've sat, I think I did like about 5 hours on like I can't really see it. My elbow ditch all the way to the inside of my arm. I just had to
Oh,
do that
that
all at once.
spot hurts.
That is pretty brutal. Um, yeah, this whole arm in general, I sat for a long time at a time. But
Dang.
shout out to Mike, he did a great job.
That spot is tough. I remember
Oh
getting
man.
the ditch, like, so where my tattoo is on my ditch, I think it was like 2.5, 3 hours maybe. And I've sat through, my longest is 6.5 to 7 on my chest. That was the worst pain of my life.
Oh yeah, that's not
Absolutely
quick.
brutal. Um, but yeah, that ditch was like, I don't know if I could do any longer than 3. That was
No.
another type of pain.
Yeah, it was
But do you
like by the
think,
end of that one, the wiping hurt more than the tattoo. It's
yeah,
almost done.
for sure. What was the longest tattoo you did on someone else?
Hmm. I think probably around 6. Um, after that, I'm
Dang.
not having a good time anymore. They're not having a good time. Uh,
Yeah.
and like, I don't like the tattoo for longer than that. I get too distracted. I'm like, I just want to be done.
Yeah, yeah. At 5 hours, you and the person are like just not talking,
Yeah, no. It like
just
goes from
trying to
being like
get
super
through it.
chatty to them just getting quiet, and I'm like, oh, they're hurting now.
Yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you
You can
mean.
always tell because they don't want to talk
Um,
to you. You're being dead silent.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Do you have any? I always find this question funny. Do you have any like funny stories of tattoos you've done or designs you've done or like horror stories? Um,
I
Anything that
have
comes to
a funny
mind?
story of one that I rejected. I got a
Really?
proposal from this 16-year-old boy, and I don't like tattooing minors. It's just a personal thing of mine. But
Yeah.
so Sisyphus, the like guy who like rolled the rock up the hill from Greek mythology every day, he wanted
Hmm.
the title was like Sisyphus tattoo. I'm like, oh, that could be cool. But the dude wanted a stick figure Sisyphus, like his the rock would be his nipple, and he wanted like a ramp under his nipple, like with the stick figure pushing it. I'm like, I'm not about to fucking live the rest of your life. You're 16.
Holy smokes. That is
That was the weirdest
crazy.
request I've ever gotten.
That is nuts. I don't know how the laws are in Michigan, but I know in New York, like you couldn't, even with parents' consent, you couldn't get one legally. Like I remember playing basketball against kids and they were all like full sleeves and they're like
Hmm.
15. And I'm like, how did you do that?
Someone's
But I
basement.
was yeah, I was about to go to Canada because we're only like 30 minutes away and
Hmm.
get one there. But what do you like? I guess, would you have a message to someone who is below 18 who would want a tattoo? Because I was that kid. I was like, I don't care where it is, what it is. I just want something.
Yeah, I was too. And I think the only thing that stopped me is my parents are pretty conservative, and they would have not liked that at all. Um,
Yeah.
but I just like sometimes I like to reminisce and look at my old Pinterest boards of tattoos I wanted when I was like 14, 15, and I'm just like I just cringe because I'm like I wouldn't want any of those anymore. Um,
Right.
so it's just like I don't know. Like when you're a teenager, I feel like you're so impulsive and you think what you like's gonna be like what you like forever. But if I had it my
Hmm.
way, I would have had the My Chemical Romance like Helena album cover like across my chest with the bloody
Yeah.
droopy eyes and all that. And I'm just not that emo
Yes.
anymore. So
Yeah. That's so funny.
I would just say to like maybe wait until you know for sure it's something that you're gonna want forever. And I'm totally not against like if you're underage getting something like a memorial tattoo or something like that that's gonna like mean something forever, but like
Hmm.
maybe save the other things for a bit later.
Yeah. That it's definitely um not, I don't regret any of my tattoos at all. I love them
No.
all. But once I started doing more research and like
Hmm.
learning about the industry and then learning about, oh, there's like thousands of other tattoo artists that aren't in my city that I could
Yeah.
go to.
Yeah, and I didn't
So,
even know that.
right?
Yeah, it's like
It's weird. You just,
I didn't really start getting tattooed until I was in the industry because before that it was like kind of hard to find somebody who did what I wanted because the only thing I knew was like word of mouth, and I feel like Instagram wasn't super huge, 5, 7 years ago,
hmm
when I was starting to like get tattooed. So you kind of just like went to like recommendations of people you knew, but they always didn't do the style that you wanted. And I didn't understand that you should like search for somebody who does the style that you want because I thought tattooers just did everything. Um, but
yeah.
yeah, just being in the industry and like meeting different people, and I'm like, oh, like super dope style. I'll just collect something from you. Um, Kind of wish I would have
hmm
known that back then because I definitely like got stuff in placements I would have gotten differently because it got in the way of stuff later down the line, and um, I didn't really
Yeah.
know I was going to collect this many, but kind of just happened.
What, right? Do you have any, like a style of tattoos that you love, but you wouldn't necessarily get, whether that's because of like just real estate on your body that you don't
Hmm.
have, or, like for example, for me, it would be Japanese traditional. I just don't think, like, I love it and I
Hmm.
appreciate it for what it is, but I don't think I would ever get it just because of how I want to save the real estate for other things, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
I really like American traditional, like the color, like full color American traditional. And I'm working on a leg of like black work American traditional, but I've like pretty devoted myself to just black tattoos at this point. Um,
Yeah, same.
and I really love the look of just like, those bold red and like yellow and blue American traditional tattoos. I just don't think that they
Hmm.
necessarily would like go along with everything else I have. Um, but in another world, I
Yeah.
would have a bodysuit of American traditional tattoos.
Right. Those always look the coolest. And
Oh yeah.
it is cool to have like just one style covering your whole body. It's pretty gnarly, but
Mhm.
it's definitely a commitment because you can't go to the thousands of other artists who do so many different styles.
Mhm.
Um, do you think that there's a style on the rise currently that hasn't really been seen as much in the past?
I definitely think like black work is on the rise. That's like what I do myself, but like there's just so many like super good black workers coming up. Um, and like it's a majority of like styles too, but like I think especially like engraving tattoos is super trendy right now. Like stuff that looks like Renaissance etchings and just like printmaking in general. Um, which I think is like a super interesting and unique style. I always loved those old etchings in art school, so uh, especially in Europe, it's really trendy right now. I follow a few black workers out there that just do super dope stuff. Um, and I think it's pretty timeless too. I mean, those pieces like have survived centuries. And black is, it's gonna last forever. So I think it's like a super unique, super kind of timeless style that I hope sticks around.
I think it will. I don't think you can go wrong with any sort of black work.
I don't think so.
And like you said, Europe is Europe from like the research I've done. Europe, Australia, and those are the big two. But the artists there are crazy, especially the
Oh yeah,
UK, like unbelievable. Do
yeah.
you
I
think that there are? Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, yeah, I was in Scotland earlier this year, and I got tattooed by a girl out in Inverness, Scotland, and I was kind of talking to her about the industry and stuff too. And I think what's cool about there is like if you're in the EU, you can just travel pretty freely through all those, countries, and so everything's like kind of meshing together and stuff. And I think it's similar in the States where like we can jump state to state, but it's like I don't know, you have all the cultures meshing in Europe and you have all the old arts. And I just think they have kind of a unique situation out there um, to make some cool pieces for sure.
Do you think that there's any like powerhouses in the States that kind of hold like a lot of talented artists? I mean, you could obviously New York, LA, just because the
Hmm.
mass population, but other than that,
Yeah. I mean, over near Ann Arbor in Detroit, there's some crazy good artists. Grand Rapids too. Michigan's got actually quite a few really good artists, and I think Chicago obviously too is pretty close to us. Um, but it's just amazing to me how many people will travel to like Holland and Grand Rapids from Detroit and Chicago to get tattooed. Um,
mm,
just the Midwest in general has a surprising number um, of
yeah,
awesome tattooers, which like I don't think a lot of people would think.
yeah. I've noticed recently a lot of people in Texas and
Mhm.
Oregon.
Yeah,
I've been
Oregon's
seeing a
killing
lot
it.
there. Oregon is definitely killing it. Weirdly, I haven't seen too many people in New York outside of the city.
Mm.
Like
Yeah.
there's a few artists in my area, and like I would say maybe 2.5 hour radius, but other than that, like you can't really find too many artists. Like they're all talented, but there's just not many of them, you know.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's
Which
strange.
is
There's like
it's
a ton around here. But I feel like a lot of people would associate like cities with having a ton of artists. But I've noticed that some
hmm
people I follow are like not from major cities where they live. They're uh, like I've got a buddy I went to art school with who's was working in like Bend, Oregon, and like all these places that you don't really
dang.
associate with like being huge like art powerhouses.
Yeah, yeah. In kind of going back into art, your time at art school, and I guess more into high school as well, like getting into the mental health topic. Did you ever study classes in college or high school that were put emphasis on mental health education?
Well, I when I was studying art therapy, I took a lot of psychology classes. So I learned about it from like the clinical sort of way. Uh, but also like in my personal life, my younger brother struggles a lot with like mental health. So I've just always kind of been in that environment and like learning about it. and like having somebody in your own life, you're like kind of comparing notes the whole time. Um, so it's like always been something talked about in my family, um, and like making my parents kind of understand where we're coming from, and because I feel like our like parents' generations, like the boomers and like Gen X, didn't ever really take care of themselves, or like it was just like kind of shameful, and so like me and my brothers like being more open about it. I feel like they've learned a lot themselves, and I think like millennials, Gen Zers, just like it's a lot more talked about and brought forward. So I feel like it's a lot easier to, get help because it's not as taboo. Like I feel like even when I was super young, like nobody ever talked about it. Um,
Mhm.
or like if you like had issues, it was like kept very hushed because it like, what would it like people think and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. And do you see that shift changing?
Oh,
'Cause like you said,
definitely.
Jen, like the yeah, it's what do you think that could be attributed to? Just having conversations like this and putting them out there?
Yeah, and I think it's like social media in general too. Like I remember when Facebook first came out and like people could like finally like, share
Yeah.
and like vent across like there's way too much venting on it now, but like I just remember like people can be complaining about stuff and like people they can like find an outlet that's like a little more impersonal to like tell their problems because it removes the step of like directly talking to somebody about your problems, which might be intimidating to like just kind of like talking about it on the internet doesn't have any direct consequences other than like you might
Hmm.
be annoying other people, but um I don't know, I feel like social media and stuff definitely makes it easier to like find other people who are going through the same thing as you, and then you don't like feel so alone. Uh, but I feel like people should definitely be like talking to people in their real lives too. I think that's where some people get in trouble. They just look for it
Yeah,
online, um, but that has its like limits.
for sure. And that's definitely it's like it's hard because it's a double-edged sword. Like you said, Instagram and I guess the internet in general has provided us so much information about mental health, and it's definitely allowed us to connect to a lot of people. But the flip side of it is it's also probably caused a lot more mental health
Absolutely.
issues.
I'm afraid for this like next generation coming up because like the
Me too.
information has never been more limitless, but like people are constantly comparing themselves to others, and like growing up on social media is like it's been studied to proven to like ruin these kids' minds, and like
Mhm.
TikTok's like ruining kids' attention spans and all that. And I'm just like, I feel like there's going to be a major shift away from it, um, hopefully, or I feel like things can't possibly keep going this way. There's going to be something that happens.
I agree. And I'm very curious to see when that happens and what that
Mm-hmm.
looks like because I definitely think it's coming. And that it kind of like goes back to one of our first points about um, the kind of getting that online real estate
Mm-hmm.
because, the longer we wait for business owners like yourself and I, the longer we wait, the harder it'll be. But
Mm-hmm.
there's also that thought in the back of my head that's like, if I want to capitalize on this now, I have to do it now because I don't know if it'll
Mm-hmm.
be here in 10, 15 years. What do you think that looks like if, we are to take a step back from social media?
I think in that case, it's really going to rely on if you want to get business, you're going to have to be personable and you're going to have to be,
Yeah.
you know, like nice and approachable and like be able to have like people skills. I'm kind of shocked how many people are like tattoo artists and have no people skills. It's like, why'd you go into this industry if you didn't want to interact with people? Because that's like
Right?
most of the job.
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
I don't know, like advertising, it's going to be a lot more how it used to be, just like word of mouth and stuff, which I think is really important to be a good person. So people will want to keep coming back.
For sure. I and yeah, it's such a tricky conversation because I don't know when that time will come. It might not come for a while, but like you said, if the trajectory of social media keeps going the way it is, I feel so bad for these kids that
Oh
have
man, yeah,
no
it's
idea what
scary.
life is like without it. It's really
It's like some
scary.
like dystopian novel.
Yeah, it really is. And yeah, a kid who, let's say, is in kindergarten now already knows how to use an iPhone. Like,
It's
that
wild.
is crazy to me.
It's
And
just like I
it
remember when
it
like the Blackberries came out, like, and we thought that was
yeah.
like the peak of technology.
Honestly, and then the little like slider phones with the
Oh
keyboards.
yeah, good old Sidekick. I had
Yeah,
one of those.
yep, yep. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough conversation. And I guess going back into the tattoo conversation a bit, do you think that there should be a not necessarily college or school for it, but do you think that the access to learn how to become a tattoo artist could be a little bit more promoted, I guess?
Yeah, yes and no. Like, there's a lot of people like trying to teach themselves right now, which I don't necessarily think's the way to
Hmm.
go. Just like knowing about all the things that can go wrong, like it's pretty
Yeah,
dangerous and very much illegal, at least in Michigan, to tattoo, without being somewhere that's licensed. But yeah, it's really hard
really.
to find out how to go about it because if like I hadn't had that friend who had a connection, I don't know where I would have started with that. Um, I think that the industry needs to have some more like regulations or whatever, because like there's really nobody telling you what an apprenticeship needs to be. So there are ones that are super predatory towards people and like never actually let
Yeah.
them like finish their apprenticeship and keep paying money and stuff like that because there's no regulations or anything like that. I got really lucky
Hmm.
into getting into a good shop, which was not predatory at all. But I definitely know people who've gone through apprenticeships where they just took advantage of them the whole time, and they never really went anywhere with it, and then they had to like go somewhere else and basically start over. Um, but then there's like
Damn.
states like Oregon where like you go through a tattoo school if you want a tattoo. So it just I think it really depends on where you are in the country. But it might be nice to
Dang.
have more like across the board um, like regulations and stuff, just so it's like less confusing and stuff like that.
Yeah, I didn't even know that Oregon had a like they you have to go to school basically to be a
I
tattoo
don't
artist.
I don't know if you have to. That's what my friend out there did. They just went to like a tattoo school, and that's like basically like your apprenticeship, from my understanding. Um,
Dang, that's
so
sick.
I think it's like kind of different per state by state.
Yeah, I got you. Um, I, I know I know a lot of people that have tried to do tattoos on their own without any experience. Like their only experience prior is drawing pen to paper.
Hmm.
Um, and it doesn't like it's a tough conversation
Hmm.
because like I mean the best way to do anything is to jump right in and figure it out and get better. But tattoos are weird because they last forever, and it's there's like no room for fucking up.
No,
Um,
and I'm definitely
like
like
so
one that didn't follow my own advice because I bought a tattoo machine when I was in college because I was broke and I started tattooing myself because I'm like I can draw. How hard this can this be? But it turns out it's not
yeah,
harder than it looks. I definitely gave myself some shit. But it's just like I had
yeah,
no idea what to do. Like I didn't know what needle depth to run at or like what voltage the freaking like power supply should be. Like you can like try to find that information on the internet, but really you need somebody. I think tattooing is unique in the apprenticeship because like there's no better way to learn than from somebody in person. Um,
mhm,
I they can like pass on you things and then you like kind of like you get your baseline and then kind of figure it out for yourself. Um, And so, like, I definitely had no idea what I was doing until I had somebody show me. And I don't, yeah. And just learning about, like, all the, like, things that you don't think could happen, like bloodborne pathogens and all that. I was like, oh, I had no idea. Like, I probably shouldn't have been doing this in my, like, college apartment.
What do you think like the most important thing that you learned through the apprenticeship that you didn't consider when you were doing it in your college dorm?
Probably just like the sterilization stuff. Like, like you should be clean and stuff, but it's like, why should I? And it's like learning how easily things can go wrong. It's kind of an eye opener, I feel. And like my father's a doctor, so like once I learned all that, I'm like, oh shit. Like, you just hear the horror
Yeah.
stories, or like you hear about people who get infections and they like turn septic, and like things can go so wrong so quickly.
Dang. So is sanitization one of the biggest components of tattooing, would you say?
I feel just like yeah, and like the knowledge of like how to do things properly and like not cross contaminate and like know how to tattoo like appropriately. Because like it doesn't matter if you're the best artist in the world. Like if you don't know how to like properly tattoo somebody's skin, like you can like blow stuff out. You can like rip their skin up, scar them. Like
Ooh,
just learning the techniques like super important.
yeah. Dang. That just thinking about like seeing pictures of horror stories like that and then
Oh
thinking about
yeah,
it makes my skin crawl. Um, well, I thank you so much. We're gonna wrap it up here.
for sure.
Um, yeah, this was a great conversation, and I think it's through conversations like this that will kind of push the tattoo community forward, and like we talked about before, um, giving artists kind of an outlet to show who they are, so then the shitty clients who bitch and complain about not getting on the books is it just it that frustrates me so much, and
Oh yeah.
it's something that I really want to do the best I can to help artists like yourself. Maybe one day I'll be an artist, but for now I just want to do as much as I can for the community, and especially with mental health. So I thank you for doing this collaboration. And if you ever need anything, let me know. Lonely Cowboy, like the company itself, has your back in whatever endeavor you need.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me on.
Of course. And then I'll just text you later about,
Perfect.
how it'll roll out in a few weeks. And yeah, have a happy Thanksgiving too.
You too.
Awesome. All right. Have a good one. Peace.
All right. See ya.